Today, we're going to talk about the secret origins of, well, probably the world's most powerful financial institution, the Federal Reserve. And you know, its story doesn't kick off in some fancy government building. Nope, it starts in total secrecy.
I mean, come on, that sounds like the opening line of a spy thriller, right? But it perfectly sets the scene for the almost unbelievable story of how the Fed was even conceived. So it really makes you wonder.
And that's the big question we're going to unpack today. We're going to follow the trail from a massive national crisis to a secret meeting that would honestly forever change the path of the American dollar and, by extension, the entire world.
Okay, so our story doesn't start with a law or a big public debate. It starts with a secret meeting, completely shrouded in mystery.
So picture this. The year is 1910. The place? Jekyll Island, Georgia. A very small, very exclusive group of the country's most powerful bankers arrived basically under the cover of darkness. What were they there for? Almost nobody knew.
So who was actually in this secret room? Well, you had Senator Nelson Aldrich, a huge political player. He was there with Frank Vanderlip from Citibank and Henry Davison from the super powerful Morgan Bank. This was, for all intents and purposes, Wall Street's inner circle, designing the entire country's financial future in private.
And the lengths they went to for secrecy, it was extreme. They traveled separately, they made sure to never eat together on the trip, and they only used their first names to hide who they really were. See, they knew that if the public ever got wind of a meeting like this, it would look like a massive Wall Street conspiracy.
And their mission? It wasn't just some small tweak. They were there to fundamentally rebuild American finance from the ground up. The goal was to create a central bank, something that could stop the kind of financial chaos that had almost brought the entire nation to its knees just a few years before.
But you gotta ask, why was a plan this drastic and this secret even necessary? To really get that, we need to rewind a few years to a moment of absolute economic meltdown.
So before 1907, the American banking system was, well, a total mess. It was completely decentralized, just thousands of tiny, isolated banks. One source called it a house of cards waiting for a breeze, which is just perfect. Without any central authority, there was no bank of last resort. So if one bank failed, the panic could just spread like a virus and threaten to take the whole system down with it.
And in 1907, that breeze turned into a Category 5 hurricane. The panic of 1907 was the trigger, an event so devastating it made the unthinkable suddenly feel like the only way to survive.
The scale of this thing was just immense. The New York Stock Exchange crashed by nearly 50%. 50! Banks were failing one after another, like dominoes, as terrified people rushed to pull their money out. Public confidence was just gone.
The chaos of 1907 basically forced everyone's hand. It created the political will for a really radical solution. I mean, sure, titans like JP Morgan actually stepped in with their own money to stop the bleeding, but everybody knew that was just a band-aid. America needed a permanent financial firefighter.
So how did this secret plan actually evolve? Well, it grew from a private idea into a national institution, and then, believe it or not, into the financial backbone for the entire world.
The plan cooked up on Jekyll Island became law in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created. Then in 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement took its power global. And finally, in 1971, one single decision would completely untether the Fed from its last restraint, giving it power that was pretty much unprecedented.
Yeah, Bretton Woods was the pivotal moment. After World War II, 44 nations were desperate for some stability. So they all agreed to peg their own currencies to the US dollar, which at the time was backed by gold. This move effectively made the Federal Reserve the central bank for the entire world.
And this right here is the key takeaway. The Fed's job just exploded. Its decisions on interest rates and money supply didn't just affect folks in America anymore. They sent massive shockwaves through the entire global financial system.
But, as we all know, with great power comes, well, great challenges. This new era of dominance created a whole new set of problems that, frankly, still haunt the system today. Pretty soon, the Fed's independence started to wear thin. Presidents began pressuring it to keep interest rates low to make the economy look good for elections, or to fund huge government programs. This pressure basically turned the Fed into what some called a money-printing factory, a huge departure from its original mission as a stable financial backstop. And the system hit its breaking point in 1971.
Facing all this economic pressure and seeing gold reserves dwindle, President Nixon cut the US dollar's final tie to gold. This Nixon shock removed the last real barrier on the Fed's ability to just create money out of thin air.
And here was the trade-off. The Fed's direct power over the economy shot way up, but the credibility of that whole Bretton Woods system was shattered. And without the anchor of gold, a whole new era of high inflation was let loose on the world.
And that pretty much brings us to today. The Fed has survived every crisis you can think of, wars, depressions, and its influence now is almost, well, mystical. Every single word from the chairman is picked apart. Its decisions can move global markets in the blink of an eye.
So, the very institution that was born in a secret meeting to prevent financial crises now faces a world full of new ones, from crazy inflation to a loss of global trust. It saved the system back in 1910, but as we look to the future, you have to wonder, is the final chapter of this story still to be written?